the first thing I wanted to say is, and I write about games for a living, and everyone in PR kind of assumes I work out of San Francisco or Chicago or New York. And I go, no, you can do this from wherever. The technology means you can create and write about games any place you have a laptop. So it makes me really happy to come to, Lexington, Kentucky, a place where I grew up and went to college, and see so many developers. So I want to give you guys a round of applause. This makes me really happy to be able to do something like this locally and actually have a turnout. And I want to talk, raise your hand if you have a game in development now or you're thinking about making a game in the future. This is probably going to be most people in the group working on it. And I want to give you guys some hints on basically how to interface with people like me, people who are able to put that game in front of a larger audience, help you get the word out, help you connect with people who want to buy the sort of games you're making. And that's a major challenge. I get around, on a slow day, 100 emails a day. And this is from EA, this is from Activision, this is from Konami, this is from literally thousands of people making iPhone games who want me to cover them. And it goes up from there. There's immense pressure to cover the big name games. And even with a full crew of reviewers, it's really, really hard to hit them all. And it's kind of easy to give all your attention to these games because they have huge marketing budgets. It used to be marketing budgets in the millions, now it's in the 10 millions. And now we're seeing games like Battlefield 3 that have a $100 million marketing budget. So they kind of bring the audience to me. It's easy for me to cover that game and know people are going to show up to read it. The secret about my job is that covering big name games is incredibly boring. We all do it because it's the job, but it's tough to wake up every morning and have another first-person shooter put in front of you. It's really hard to get excited about the yearly Madden when you barely understand football. But you kind of have to bring the audience. But the real fun is kind of finding the smaller games to write about and get people excited about that show you something new. When I played Modern Warfare 3, another game with a huge budget, I really enjoyed it. I gave it a good review. I think it's a good game. But I'm not surprised by it. It's very rare for me to play a game that's surprising. I'm often delighted by games. I always have fun playing games, but I'm very rarely surprised. And that's kind of the opportunity that indie games have. It's smaller teams with small, if any, budget. So you're able to do kind of the ideas that the bigger teams either can't or won't do. The ideas that have a niche audience. And because it is a small team with a small budget, if you have a sliver of the sales of any of these big games, you're considered a success. And that's what you have to capitalize on, I think, when you're making an independent game. You have to have a hook. You have to have something to show people like me that I haven't seen dozens of times already. One independent developer sent me a review code for a first-person shooter. And it was a pretty decent first-person shooter. It was set in World War II. I had fun with it. And I was amazed it was made with a 3-person team, and it looked pretty good, but it was a first-person shooter. It had nothing going for it, and it was selling on Steam for something like $25. And you can buy Bad Company 2 for $5. They didn't make the case for their own game. There's nothing in there to say you need to give these guys your money instead of this more polished thing that's now on sale that costs millions of dollars to do. You have to have that hook. You have to provide something that you're able to make because of how brave you're able to be in the market you're working in. That's the only advantage you really have in terms of getting market share. For instance, has anyone played Artemis in this room? Okay. The creator of Artemis didn't even contact me. A buddy of mine sent me an email and it said, you need 6 people, you need 6 computers, it's $40, but you will feel what it feels like to man your own Starship Enterprise. There's no way you can pitch that to a major label. You need 6 computers to play it, you need 6 people, you need a projector, and it's $40. That has failure written all over it. It was designed by one guy. And basically you get 6 computers together, 5 of the computers are stations, and you sit in front of them and it basically has a screen that has numbers. And it tells you there's an engineering screen, and there's a tactical screen, and there's someone who handles weapons. And then there's a captain who looks at the main screen, asks people for information, and then tells them what to do. So you basically walk around and you go, hey, I need, more impulse speed, I need you to ready the torpedoes, and we're gonna go up to section A and tell me when we get there. And you have to organize all these different people bringing in information and create a game plan. There's very little story in this game. It's all kind of emergent. It just kind of sends ships after you, or you discover a wormhole, or all these different things happen, and the joys in the interaction. And in the fact that in your living room, you can feel like you're on the bridge of the Starship Enterprise, which is something that's worth $40, especially when you get 6 licenses for that. That's an indie game that's going to go places, because there's nothing you can get at Walmart that is going to replicate something like that. If you consider what it would have been like to go to EA and pitch the idea of Minecraft, it's going to look like crap. It's going to have really low resolution textures. There's not much gameplay, and you can create anything you want. That's a terrible idea on paper. It makes absolutely no sense. It was coded by a very, very small team. And he is a god in the independent scene now, and he's making a ton of money. And it's exactly for that reason. Because what the big leagues don't understand is that people love to create. And he gave them tools to create things, even on a limited scale, and people responded to that. And that's the sort of thing you need. You need an angle, you need a hook, you need something no one else can do, but you're offering. And this can be something in aesthetics. It could be a black and white game. It could be something in physics. It can be something inherent in the gameplay. It doesn't matter. But you do need something that would seem, if you brought it to a larger company, to be foolhardy. Or else they're already going to do it, and they're going to give more money to it, and you can't compete with that. So you have to find these niches. You have to find these really interesting gameplay experiments, basically, and then you have to execute it well. Once you have this thing, you have to convey this to the press very, very quickly. And that's another reason why something that's high concept is so important. If you can't describe it in 3 seconds or 3 sentences, you're at a major disadvantage. Like with Artemis, I can explain that very quickly. With Minecraft, I can explain it very quickly. And if you're the right kind of person, you're going to want to play it just based on this explanation. Contacting the press is going to be a lot like submitting stories for publication. For every 3 dozen emails you send out, you might get 1 back. So you have to hone your approach. And as I'm scanning, the hundreds of emails I get a day, most of them are poorly written. And these are from PR companies that make millions of dollars a year working for PR. Basically sucks. I'm sorry if there's any PR people out there right now. But even big name PR sucks very badly at their job, and they're mostly phoning it in. That's why it's so important to be able to distill the essence of your game and tell a writer or reporter why they should care in the subject line, and hit it even harder in the body of the email. Before you even get to that point, you have to tailor your pitches. Aim them at writers who seem to like the sort of game you're creating. It's a lot more art than science, really, at this point. Read a bunch of gaming blogs if you can. Try to pick a few writers you really like, and then say, hey, you've covered this, here's something I have. This is such kind of a skeezy trick because you're buttering them up, and you don't even have to be sincere, but we love it and it works. I mean, this is totally honest. If you say, hey, I just read this story, even if you haven't, it perks your ears up. You might not get a response, but it's going to get you a little bit higher in the pile. Always, before you contact the press, make sure you have enough that it's going to be worth their time to write a story. And deciding when to go for publicity is really crucial. And that's going to be really one of the hardest decisions you're going to have to make. You should always have a video. The first thing I look for when I'm scanning an email to determine whether or not I want to contact someone is there a video to gameplay. I'm going to skip 5 paragraphs to text, follow an iTunes link, follow this, go to Steam, see if I can find a video. A video that shows off your gameplay well and succinctly will get passed around, and it will get you noticed. There was a very, very small word game for the iPad that one of the editors for The Escapist sent me, and she was like, this looks great. And that's it. It was just a video. But the video in 45 seconds laid out that you have to kind of, with your finger, you find the words, then the things drop. And again, this sounds bad when I'm saying it. It sounds like every other word game. But with the aesthetics and the way it works and almost the Tetris-like aspect to it, it works in video. And you can see the clean design and you can see that it all works. And that's very exciting for a writer. I know that this is a real game. Make sure that your video is on YouTube, multiple resolutions, make it easy to embed, make it easy to share. I actually asked a few people what it would take for them to respond to an email from an indie game developer. And Jim Sterling, who's the review editor from Destructoid, said, it comes down to what I can see. I can't filter through a bunch of text emails. I get billions. Have art, video, and screens for me. And they have to be very compelling. You have one chance at this, and they have to be right there and easy to find. Jess Condit, who's an editor for Joystick, she said the most important thing in the email is passion. And you need a gameplay video showing off an innovative art style or mechanics, but most importantly, good grammar. The one thing that sinks so many of these videos and emails is that you can tell no one spent any time on it. It's possible you're a brilliant programmer or a brilliant artist and you're a crap writer. It happens all the time. It's nothing to be ashamed of. I know doctors who can't put sentences together. If you have a brother who's a really good writer, if your mother or father are a really good writer, if you know a buddy who can put something together for you, have them do it. This is really important to convey your message in kind of a professional manner. So reach out to the press when you have something playable is really, really important. If I hit you back and I go, let me play it, and you go, well, we're 6 months away, you're going to be starting from scratch in 6 months. But if you have a build, even if it's a very early build, and a writer goes, let me play it, and you can send it to them, that's going to stick in their head. Once you have someone playing something, it's like the old salesman technique of handing someone something in the store, and once they have it in their hand, they're 50% more likely to walk out with it. If someone's willing to invest their time in installing your game and giving it an hour, their time is sunk into it. They're either going to write about it or it's going to be a write-off. So make sure as much as possible to have playable code, even if it's early, once you start reaching out to the press. The other thing that I really, really enjoy about covering indies, and why I like supporting indies, is because when I try to cover a big name game, and I don't care if you're IGN, I don't care if you're Kotaku, I don't care how big your outlet is, you're going through layers and layers and layers of PR. Interviewing a big name developer is one of the most painful things you can possibly do. Because it's you, it's the developer. Hopefully you're looking at each other. Usually it's on the phone, and God forbid they demand it over email and to see the questions first. And that happens all the time. But even if you're at some place like E3 and you're face-to-face, there's a PR person here and there's a PR person here. And anytime you have an interesting question, one of those PR people is going to go, we're not discussing that yet. So, well, we're not going to discuss that yet. You can expect news on that in about a month. You're never going to get anything interesting out of a developer interview. They give up exactly what they expect to and want to, and if they start to step away from the script, PR is there to beat them in line. Developers, big name developers at least, in interviews look like caged animals. They're always they're afraid to say the wrong thing, and it's just the most depressing thing to do. Indies, on the other hand, are wonderful because they will talk about everything when it comes to the game. Be willing to talk about where you came up with the idea, how you're executing it, where you're working, how many hours you're working, what you do in your normal life, what your wife thinks about it. All these details are the story. One developer I was interviewing, he was saying that he looked at a feature and he was like, well, I see all these, quote-unquote independent developers who have these massive offices. And, there's indies and then there's indies. So he was like, I wrote my game, and it was a very, very good game. He was like, I wrote my game in a chicken coop. The guy lives in a farm, and there's a room on the chicken coop with a computer in it, and he puts on earplugs so he doesn't hear the clucking, and he codes his game. And he codes his game for 8 hours a day in the chicken coop. And he thought this was a shameful thing, that he couldn't afford an office space, and I was like, that's your story. Like, that's the headline. That's wonderful. And people respond to that, and they think it's funny, and they appreciate the fact that you can make a really, really good game in a chicken coop on a laptop. It's not impressive when you see a really cool laid out office and great games come from it. That's where great games come from. What's really impressive is that you can make something really cool, really well designed, and really fun from a chicken coop. These are the stories we're looking for. And if you have something like that, any kind of angle, and you front load your communication with it, you write your story for me. I can give you 3 questions, you can give me interesting answers, I can give you 800 words, and put literally millions of eyeballs on your game. That's how it works. And you do have to think of this as a game. The other thing that's interesting about publicity is there is not a single story in game writing that is not viral. If Rock, Paper, Shotgun covers something, then by definition it's worth covering. And every other site out there is going to cover it. I've actually tracked this for like a month, and every day there's 8 stories in gaming. And they're reported on across hundreds of sites in slightly different ways. You want to be one of those 8 stories. And you can. You just have to get your foot in the door in one of the places that puts your game in a position where it can't be ignored by anyone else. Let's see. The other thing I think is interesting, or that's helpful, other than being attentive and responding to emails quickly and offering as much access as you can possibly stomach. If you have code finished, if you have a finished game, try to get the press, if at all possible, if someone agreed to review it, to hold the reviews until your game is out. This is something that I've had a lot of, I've talked to a lot of independent developers about this, and a lot of people fight me on it. They go, no, we want the review out as soon as possible because we want buzz. The only, buzz is a sound that bees make, okay? Sales is what is actually gonna pay your bill. And the idea is, when someone reads the review, and hopefully the review is good because you made a great game or else you wouldn't be releasing it. If they read 800 glowing words about your game and there's a little button at the bottom that they can give you $5, they're gonna do it. If at the end it goes, so-and-so is gonna be available for PC or Xbox Live Indies in 2 weeks, you are never gonna get that sale. They will never think about it again. Because 2 weeks is an eternity in this industry. There's gonna be 10 more $60 games released that they're fighting for. There's going to be another article about another independent game, and they did have someone hold their review until the game, and they got the $5. So this is really important. I think if you take away 3 things out of this, it's that you have to have that angle, and you have to have that one thing that's unique and that no one else is doing, and especially no one in the majors is doing. You have to reach out to press when you have enough to make the maximum impact. And this is very, very hard because when you have something that you really like and that you're excited about and you have this great idea, you want to share it. But you have to hold on to it so that if you have a situation where someone is interested in covering your game, you can give them enough that it's worth your while. The third thing is make sure you hold the review until you have a playable product, because you want these games to sell. And again, that link is going to get passed around. It might make it on Reddit. It might make it all across the internet. It's the same thing that happened in Minecraft. This was a viral thing, and it was, very smart the way it was handled because it was all word of mouth. And that happens because when someone heard about it, they were able to buy it, and they were able to buy it at a very low price. Gosh, those are basically all the remarks I had in terms of advice that I've kind of come across when it comes to dealing with independent developers. The other thing is just not to ever get discouraged. This is an incredibly tough business, and there's thousands of games released every year, and it's very, very hard to stand out. The gentleman who created Artemis, he used to work for Activision, I believe, and he created, I think he said, a dozen indie games before that. None of them did anything. Like, this guy was doing odd jobs to make a little bit of money, and he was shocked that he finally landed on something that was able to pay his bills. And he's doing really well off this really goofy game. The first one likely won't be a hit, but you have to keep doing it. This is the same thing with any artistic endeavor. When it comes to something like writing novels, we're used to someone having 10 different novels in a shelf somewhere, and they kind of learn how to work with the novel process and how to get, turned down when you go in for publication. We kind of assume that games are different and that you learn all the skills and you're able to create a game, but it is absolutely no different than writing a book, than painting a picture, than learning to play a musical instrument. most people's first songs aren't very good. And it's the same thing with games. This is a marathon, and you have to stick with it, and you have to continually work at either one game and continually iterate, or focus on finishing something, figuring out what you like and didn't like about that, and move on to the next thing. The worst thing you can do is stop the work, because when you stop the work, you stop growing. Whether or not you have a hit or not, the thing that I found that separates any developer on any level of this business, the good from the bad, the successes from the failures, is that they're always working and they're always looking for something else. And you have to have that same kind of searching mindset and the ability to be told 100 times that something isn't good until you find the one thing that is. At this point, if you have any questions. Yeah?
I had a question about what you were just talking about not wanting to get your game promoted just for buzz.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of have an idea about this. I've always wondered, and maybe you can tell me if you agree or if you think that's true. I've always felt as an indie the same way, that like getting a bunch of buzz for your game when it's not out is worthless to you. Mm-hmm. I started in the mud industry where people love to like announce their game when it was like 2 years from being a game.
Right.
And so I've always been really wanting to keep the lid on things until it's playable. But then, do you think that people watch the big games where they play for buzz big time? Like they want to get news out 6 months before their game comes out. They're all about the buzz. Is that a different attitude? Like, is part of the reason they want that buzz kind of to control the discussion?
Absolutely.
Like you'll see, like Hellgate was on the cover of PC Gamer like 4 times over 3 years, and that's one more time a different game can't be on there. Mm-hmm. Okay, I've always wondered that, and is that just my conspiracy theory?
And that's the thing with dealing with the majors. When you have this level of money and this level of access to the press, is that you can control the message. But the problem is, as a member of the press, I get tired of that. And it's so, like, you see, when you go to E3 and you see something announced, and it's like summer 2014. And I'm like, well, why the hell did you show me that? Right. Like, I'm excited about it, and there's something next door that I can buy in a month. And we're actually seeing, I'm trying to think of the name of the PC game that was created in here. Hard Reset. I'm buddies with the guy who promoted that. I actually wasn't happy with the final product, but they tried something where they did a real quick video. They had preview code out to the press like 2 weeks after that, and they launched like 2 weeks after that. And it was amazing because everyone was energized by the first video, wondering what this kind of classical-looking first-person shooter was. And then right when their interest started to wane 2 weeks later, they were playing it. And that's kind of how I think the model should be. If you have money, and if you can kind of get yourself on the cover of PC Gamer, that works. But even then, you really run a risk of burning everyone out on your game. And people going, yeah, that's great, but why do I care? Like, how long have we been arguing about Diablo 3 and the color palette? Like, yeah, or is that a conversation we really need to have right now? Is anyone finding that creatively stimulating? Duke Nukem, if they called it Shooter X, it would have just been a crappy game. But the fact that it was a 10-year in the making, everyone was talking about it every step of the way, crappy game, made it a debacle. So yeah, I think in a lot of ways that paradigm is broken. And I think by managing your message very tightly and being able, if someone is excited by your video, to be able to play it quickly, and then once they play it, to be able to review it and then have it released quickly, you can really keep that momentum going, kind of stay in the forebrain of all the people who are reading about your games, and ultimately convert that into sales. I mean, I don't think anyone creates games to be a torture genius and not sell games. We all want to do this for a living at some point, or make at least a little bit of money out of it. I know when I write something, I don't write because I'm bored. I do it because I love it, but I also have, 3 kids who I went to send to college one day. So this is a creative thing, and you should always remember it's a creative thing, and anyone who tells you that making games isn't creating art, they're bullshitting you. That's a lie, it is. But it's also a business, and you don't have the luxury of having businessmen on your team, usually. And you don't have PR people who've done this before. It's basically all you. So this is the sort of thing you kind of have to change your thinking on, become aggressive with promotion, and know when to promote. And I think once you get in that mindset, you're really going to feel empowered by what you can do. And what people can do always ends up being much more than they think they can when it turns to promotion. I mean, all the game writers are on Twitter now, for the love of God. And most people I know will respond to most people who tweet at them. Send them a video. I know people who get coverage that way. It happens every day. Any other questions? Yeah.
Now that Adobe's no longer producing Flash, how's that going to affect the industry?
I'm sorry?
Adobe's dropping Flash. How is that going to affect the industry?
In terms of...
They're not going to make it anymore.
I mean, I don't know. That's kind of outside of my pay grade. I just write about the games. You guys make them. I mean, you tell me. From what I understand, and especially with iOS games being so popular and, you know, Steve Jobs' whole attitude of hating Flash so much, right. I think the writing on the wall has been that Flash is dead for a very long time. And from what I understand is there aren't that many people sad to see it go. So people who have been around for a while and are used to coding in Flash are going to have to adapt, but for most people I don't think it's going to be much of a change. I think you had a question.
Yeah, you were talking about how the big name games are really popular, they get a lot of eyeballs as far as the reviews and things like that. How popular are the pre-release buzz leaks over, like, let's say a year? You know, like they do a screenshot drop, or they talk about feature X. So those articles, are they really popular?
You know, this frustrates the hell out of me, and I think that's a great question because so few people actually look at those numbers. I think people do those stories because everyone does those stories and they're easy. When you look at the huge gaming blogs, there's this kind of Fox News mentality that there has to be that crawl going. Like if 15 minutes goes by without a post, like, Jesus, what would people do if they didn't update the site and see another bit of content? They're really not. Like, they do low, medium numbers. If you ever see Ars Technica running one of those or a game trailer, I'm either like bored or doing something I care about because those are filler. They take nothing to do. They don't really do numbers. And there's really no reason to do them. I think a lot of writers do those stories because it gets you good with the developers. And you get to go, hey, we've been promoting this game for 6 months. Of course we need an early copy. So no, they're not that popular. And if it's a slow news day, it's going to get on all the major blogs because they have a slot to fill. So, I mean, it works in that way, but I don't know anyone who's ever clicked on a post-it joystick to see 2 new teasers of what a trailer at the Video Game Awards might look like, brought to you by Game Informer, when I need to play that when it comes out. Like, that's worthless in terms of PR, I think.
Are you ever influenced by indie cross-marketing? Like,
How so?
For example, like Super Meat Boy put in a whole bunch of unlockables that were characters from other indie games. Like, do you ever get curious about that?
Yeah. No, I think Super Meat Boy has done everything right. Everything right. They started with a great game, for one, and this is a game that's been already across multiple platforms. And they've really controlled the message, and they've been hyper supportive of other independent developers, and they've had their character in a ton of other games. Has it influenced me? I think so. I think if you see kind of a striking character like that in another game, you do kind of want to check it out. Especially if someone's like, oh man, that's the guy from this game. Like, that creates buzz. And it's also a way of vouching for another game. If, Team Meat put a character in a game, they love games more than anything else. I mean, what's the gentleman's name? Edmund McMillan, who just did The Binding of Isaac, which was a wonderful game that I really adored. He did that after Super Meat Boy in 4 months because he could not be making a game. Like, that's the type of people these guys are. So if they put something in their game, or they allow one of their characters that they created and they obviously care so much about in someone else's game, you should trust that because they're saying, we really like these guys and we're kind of, it's like letting another band you really enjoy open up for you on the road. So I don't know if that really impacts the press. I think it's interesting. I think it's a really good way of getting other gamers into those markets. If you can set up something like that, It's wonderful. Most independent developers are very giving with other people whose projects they believe in, and it's one of the best things about the scene. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just kind of getting into specifics of like the media, like on these emails and stuff that you talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Would you want them attached in a zip file or attached? No, just a link to the site, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you have to have a good subject line.
Yeah.
And like most of the subject line, it literally is. It's like 3 new screenshots of this.
Right.
Or people being, the thing that kills me is when people are being self-consciously goofy.
Yeah.
Like another useless email blast from so-and-so, aren't I quirky? I'm like, no, really, you're just giving me a headache. So you have to have a really good headline. And I hate to beat on the Artemis train, but again, that tagline's really good.
Yeah.
6 computers, 6 people, $40 Starship Enterprise. It's wonderful. I'm into it. Like, give me a little bit of a story, give me a background, give me a hook that's going to make me want to click through. Just like anything else, you have to grab interest and kind of pull the person in. Once they're in, give them 2 or 3 sentences about who you are, what you're doing, why they should care, and then give me a link to the YouTube video, give me a link to your webpage, and that's basically it. Or give me like a link to just a gallery of art. Putting files into emails is rarely a good idea, especially when a lot of, Joystick is an AOL company.
Right.
Like, you don't know if they're going to get spammed out because of that, or some really silly corporate policy is going to kill that email. So the best thing to do is include links. The other absolutely astounding thing or mistake that a lot of independent developers do, and this drives me crazy because it keeps me from doing my job. On your official webpage, make it very easy for me to get a hold of you. I've stumbled I read Reddit a lot because God knows I don't have enough to read. And sometimes it's like, this game looks great, and it's an official webpage for a game I've never heard of. So I click on it, they're right, the game looks great. There's a video, there's a screenshot, I get the angle, it's everything I need, and then I'm looking around and there's no press section. There's no email address, and I'm like, I want to cover your game. Let me. If I really, really care about it, I might send a tweet out and go, hey, does anyone know anyone who worked on this? And usually, I have a large enough network that someone did. But that's not work you ever want to make a reporter do. You want to bring them kind of into your world as easily as possible and make it very painless for them to write about you, and that's always going to pay off. Did you have another question?
One thing, I just wanted to clarify on the Flash thing, and I went ahead and looked it up real quick to make sure I wasn't wrong. They're ending development on mobile, but not necessarily on the web. So while that's still big, it's not like, oh my God, Flash on the web is dying. And so that's a little bit important difference there, because there are obviously Flash games on the PC, and the browser are still going to be pretty big. But my question was, when you talk about the video that you need to have, kind of related to the don't use poor grammar, like how awesome and how high do the production values need to be in your video? I mean, obviously it needs to be clear and high resolution so you can clearly show the game being played, but do you need, other than showing the game and just maybe discussing the game on the video, how important to you do you think it is to be real fancy, if that makes any sense?
I don't think it does need to.
And all kinds of stuff like that.
If you don't think you can do like a good voiceover, or if you're not very good at editing, just find a great 30 seconds of your gameplay and show it. Just if there's a moment where everyone goes, oh, when they play your game or when they're testing it, show that moment. If there's a mechanic that sets your game apart, show it. I think if you have something like, I remember seeing the first few trailers for Portal, and that's a Valve game. It had incredible production values, even the earliest trailers, and that came from another indie game, Narbuncular Drop. But if you stripped away the funny voiceover and kind of the CGI animation and just showed the gameplay segments from that video, you still would have known that Portal was something very special. All of the things that Valve spent money on were nice, but they were unnecessary. So I think if you just want to do gameplay, and you do have kind of like a 15 to 30 second sizzle reel that shows off what makes your game unique, and then you just have, the name at the front or the end, and then released in 2012 on these platforms, I think that's enough. I think most of us know, especially if it's coming from an independent developer, that you don't have, Martin Scorsese in the back, like doing jump cuts and, special effects and everything. Just clearly show the game and why people should care about it, and it's going to get the message across. I think a lot of the other stuff and a lot of trailers is almost distracting. Like, I always want to see the game.
Right.
And I remember when they did the Skyrim reveal, and it was literally like video of a CGI wall. And it's like, Skyrim. I'm like, you could distill that to 3 seconds. Skyrim's coming. Good night, everyone. And we all would have been really excited because it's Skyrim, right? Like, there's a new Elder Scrolls, but they had so the trailer for that was meaningless. Show gameplay. There's so many pre-rendered and CGI things that the more gameplay you show, and the more you break it down, almost the more you're going to stand out in a good way. I mean, this is a meat and potatoes thing. Show your game and make it look fun to play.
Because I've made demo videos before, and my daughter thinks they're awesome, but I don't know if she's the fairest judge.
I doubt she is. I'm gonna go out on a limb there. Did you have a question?
Yeah, like we were talking about the cross promotion question. Made me think of this. The Humble Indie Bundle used to be like a once a year thing, and they've really been working that out.
Jesus Christ, those guys. Yeah. I love the Wolfire guys. I really do, and they stumbled on probably the best way to make money ever. And I can't be cynical about it, because a ton of the money goes to Electronic Frontier Foundation, which I love. A ton of the money goes to Child's Play, which I'm in the process of putting together the Ars Technica Child's Play drive. And a lot of the money goes back to the developers. These are all good things, and they're hyper successful. But like every 3 months, you send me an email like, you've covered us in the past, and I'm like, what else is there to say? There's a new Humble Bundle. We know how it works.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. They started doing like these over and over and over again, and now I'm like, yay.
The first few people were like, oh, I really want to support this because it's no DRM, and a lot of the games work on Linux, and all the games work on by Mac, and it's a wonderful thing. And that was very successful, and a lot of the games are really good. But it's gotten to the point where they're going to run out of that front-end goodwill really quickly. Unless they... I mean, you can always sell the Humble Indie Bundle with good games. That's never going to go out of style. That method of choose your own price, if you have a good bundle of games, I think it's always going to be successful, as long as you do have a month or two between them. It's just a matter of... I think a lot of the offering early version of games, I think that's kind of a mistake in a little bit. I think as they evolve that business model, they're going to have to step up their game in terms of what they offer. Which brings us to a really interesting topic with things like the Humble Indie Bundle and how successful it is and how much money it makes everyone, and the huge sales on Steam. And the people at Valve actually gave a talk, I think it was 2 years ago, about the Steam sales and how they don't understand them. They do not understand the pricing on games. They're at the forefront of price experimentation, but they don't understand consumer behavior. No one does. But what I think is fascinating is you can't launch at $2, or people go, oh, $2, it's probably not a good game. But if you launch at $10, and then 3 months later you're on sale for $2, and you're part of, one of these sales, they said that they expected as the price went down for there to be kind of like this really neat line where you get more sales, right? And it's like, well, the volume works, so you make a little bit more money. What they found is when you drop the price of your game in a concerted effort with all these other good games by 75%, it's like this. It's like sales went up like 1,500% is what they said. That's not a neat little fun line where you squeeze out a few extra dollars. That's like huge Christmas bonus money. And we see a lot of this in the iOS market. Don't be afraid after you release a game to play with pricing, or to try to get involved in something like the Humble Bundle, or to launch and say, choose your own price, or for the first 100 people, it's this. All those things are really, really interesting. They get people talking, and they kind of change the concept of value. There's safer ways to do it, and there's more risky ways to do it. But the thing is, the people at Valve have dozens of people whose job it is to look at pricing for 10 hours a day for years, and they have no idea what works and what doesn't. Other than if you drop the price, you see this huge thing. So don't be afraid to take a shot in the dark, because you might stumble on something that's actually really effective in terms of pricing and promotion. Yeah.
What was your favorite review and why?
Just in terms of writing about games?
Yeah, what was most interesting?
I'll tell you what. That's a tough one. I will say it's really... Everyone thinks we have fun writing about bad games, and nothing can be further from the truth. Because to write about a bad game, you have to play a bad game.
Right.
And that is the worst thing. It's like being a food critic and going to McDonald's. But you can't just have, like, you know, one Big Mac. You have to sit there for 30 effing days and eat every single thing and then go back for whatever the McDonald's... This analogy falls apart when I start to talk about multiplayer. But and invite friends over and they're eating crappy food and you're all making faces at each other and you just want to... At that point, it's not fun to say McDonald's is crap because you've eaten so much of it. It's really hard to write about good games. When a game doesn't work, I always know why. I can explain why. I know when I lose interest. I know when a mechanic doesn't work. I know when pacing doesn't work. I know when I don't care about the story. This is all basic things. But when a game works very, very well, it's like magic. And the best magic tricks you can never figure out. So, like, try to be the guy to describe the thing you love, but you don't know why you love it. And you have 800 words and you need other people to care. So I think I really enjoy writing about good games when I feel like I've kind of captured the essence of why the game is good. And I wish I could think of some examples for that, and they're eluding me right now. But that's kind of the challenge. And I always know a game is good, and I get this feeling very rarely these days. A game is good when, as you're playing it, you want to sit down and write about it. That's the absolute best feeling in the world, and that's why I got into this. So that's like the easiest way to tell if a game is good. If I want to write about it and spread the word and explain, a good game should make anyone who plays it, even if they're not a writer, feel lyrical. And I love games that do that. And that's like 1 in 100, I think. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm an aspiring games writer, I guess you'd say. I'm studying the journalism here and everything.
Okay.
I'm like the one person who actually writes about games in the middle of basketball country, but...
I mean, you too. You know, I went to school here.
But a problem that I always have in writing is, like, I do reviews and columns for the local newspaper, for the school's newspaper, and one problem that I always have is when writing about games and doing reviews and stuff is I'm guilty of doing like a lot of like hyperbole when it comes to writing about games, and because I get way too excited about it, and I always say like, it's the best game ever, and it's like, no, it's not, and then I just regret after it goes out to publication. It's like, best game ever, like, oh, how do you deal with hyperbole?
Games, when you play games, they cast a spell on you. And that was the thing that really got me when I wrote my Modern Warfare 3 review. Because Modern Warfare 3, in a lot of ways, is rhetorically bankrupt. Like, all the tricks the Modern Warfare series uses to get you into the action, they're so cheap, and they're so obvious. But what people don't understand is that when they go to see a Michael Bay movie, they're usually having a good time while the movie's playing. Like, shit, that jet came in and Nicolas Cage ripped the guy. Yeah, like, you really feel that in the movie. And then you walk out of the movie, and then you're like, that didn't make a lick of sense. And a lot of games are like that you feel very good about them while you're playing, and only kind of later in retrospect do you see the flaws. And I think that's really what you need to do, is to give yourself the space and the time away from the game and kind of mull over everything for a bit before you get down to write, and put it next to other games you've played recently. I think Roger Ebert had a really interesting essay on this topic about movie writing, and he said if you say that this is the best movie you've seen this year and it's not #1 in your top 5 list at the end of the year, he's like, you're really bad at hyperbole. He's like, and that happens all the time. You read reviews of so many games where it's the best thing since sliced bread, and then a month later, everyone's writing about the flaws. And this happens with every big release. To be a really, really good game writer, you have to break the cycle, and it's a very hard thing to do. But I really do think it is just walking away from the game, giving yourself some space, and then sitting down to write. And the thing that I tell everyone is the best thing you can do if you want to be a game writer, and this is if you're writing about games or for games, is to play fewer games. This isn't like writing a book where if you read more, you become a better writer. I think so many games right now are inspired by other games that we get this really ugly feedback loop. We've all read Lord of the Rings, we've all seen James Cameron's Aliens, and we've been remaking these two things for like 20 years. Go out and go to the art museum and look at paintings. Read some poetry. Watch black and white movies. You're going to find inspiration in so much that isn't gaming that you can bring into gaming or writing about games that gives you context for these pieces of art. And that's incredibly helpful to just walk away. If you ever listen to like jazz inspired by jazz, it's terrible. Like rock and roll was great because it was inspired by old rhythm and blues. And now we have rock that was inspired by rock and is inspired by rock, and that gave us Nickelback. And no one has ever in the history of the world picked up a guitar because they wanted to be in Nickelback. So I think that's the best thing you can do, is to give yourself space and experience as much as you can that isn't gaming. And that way, when you kind of become a richer person in terms of all kinds of art forms, you're going to bring that context into games and game writing, and it's going to be really richer for it. Yeah.
What do you think about the way the concept of beta testing has changed so much? Like, 15 years ago, if a game was in beta, it was actually to test the game. Now it's kind of
it's
part of the
promotion.
marketing message and everything like that. And as a corollary to that, what do you think about things like say with Star Wars, how they lift an NDA only weeks before the game comes out? So those are kind of two questions, I guess.
EA is doing interesting things with beta tests. They were bitten because Battlefield 3 was an actual beta test, and everyone thought it was a demo. And that hurt them very, very badly because that was very early code, and not a lot of people understood that, and it was designed to test the weapon system and the netcode. And everyone thought, oh, this was a demo, this is how the game is going to play. And it was a glitchy mess because it was very, very early code. But people were pre-ordering the game to get in the beta, and that really soured a lot of people. The Old Republic is tricky. They've spent just an obscene amount of money making that game, and it's the Star Wars license. And they have to have a lot of subscribers out the gate. So I don't really know. I don't follow MMOs that well, so I don't know whether or not Star Wars is going to do well. I'll tell you what, Uber Entertainment, which is the team that does Monday Night Combat, now they're doing Super Monday Night Combat. They're doing something really interesting with Super Monday Night Combat. And I don't know if anyone's played Monday Night Combat. Anyone? Yeah, okay. So Monday Night Combat was kind of a third-person shooter with some like Dota-like influences almost with the whole thing. And they're taking away kind of the shooter aspect and they're bringing more strategic aspects. And I talked to the executive director on the game, and he doesn't really know how that's going to work yet. He's wondering, like, is this a good move? Are the players going to respond to it? He's like, I'm not sure how to design this game. So the second they had something up and running, they invited 50 people from the community to play it. And they've been doing this for 8 weeks. And every week, from Monday to Wednesday, they make changes and updates and patches. And then on Thursday, they roll out the patches, and then they actually get on, what's the name of the program? It's not Vent, but it's something else. But it's a voice chat. And they play, I'm sorry? TeamSpeak? No, it was like Mumble? Mumble, yeah. And they play with their community. And they listen to the feedback, and they play like 3-hour-long matches, and they see what works and what doesn't. And then the next week, they roll out a totally new set of changes. So it's kind of this, it's a true beta in that they're very slowly expanding it from, in 8 weeks, I think they said they went from 50 players to 2,000 now. And they do weekly updates. And they say if something breaks the game or if they find an exploit, they'll patch on a Friday so people have fun over the weekend. And I think that's a really fascinating way to do a beta, and by the time they release it. And it doesn't really have like a normal release schedule. They said it's released when we just open the floodgates. And when people are happy for 3 weeks in a row, they're like, the game's done. It's an open-ended development cycle. So I think there's great things you can do with the beta. You just kind of have to think outside of the way everyone else does it.